afternoon, actually. It's nighttime. I am here with a very special guest who'll introduce himself in a sec. But we are currently in the Whitworth.fm studio, and we are just kind of hanging out here. And yeah, we have a great show lined up for you guys today. So it's Jan term on campus. It's kind of a slower pace for campus. And I'm here with a professional right now, so I'm super nervous. But one of our greatest co-founders, Ike Amici, is not here right now with us. He is currently in surgery, guys. We gotta pray for my guy Ike. He's currently he's in a tough spot right now. So just lift my boy up to the big man upstairs. And so we have a pretty awesome show today. We're gonna be talking about a bunch of random things. Actually, it's kind of just a free for all. We'll be talking about just a bunch of things. I had it all planned out in my mind when I was first thinking about this show, and then it kind of just went all over the place. So today we're talking about racial treatment when it comes to like the law enforcement. We can also talk about campus universities' treatment of students who are of minorities. And also, just really quick, one more shout out to Ike. He is going through a lot right now, so we just gotta lift him up. I get to introduce our incredible co-host, who's in the studio live right now, here with me, sitting right next to me. It's none other than Josiah Van Wingerden.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm happy to be here in the booth with Dill. I am so stoked to be on the show. I've always wanted to be a guest on InDifference. I think it's a really cool podcast what the guys are doing, and I'm just really stoked to be here. I'm visiting for the week, filling in for Ike, never replacing Ike because he is irreplaceable.
Bless him.
Like Dill said, prayers up to the big guy. Yeah, we love you, Ike.
Yeah, Ike. Thankfully. So here's our little memory cell for Ike. He recently uploaded a couple songs to our playlist.
And they are lit.
So
right now.
I'm going to play our first song. We're going to go into a music break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about everything you can think of when it comes to how police enforcement are like either racially profiling, or I don't even know what they're doing sometimes, half the time. If you know someone in police enforcement that is doing it right, please call in. We'd love to hear how they're doing that. If you know someone or have had an experience with a cop that's questionable, call in too. We'd love to talk about that. But also, if you are a student of the minority and you have been minoritized in any way, call in. We'd love to hear about that too, whether that's on this campus, whether that's in another campus or in a workplace. There's a lot that we can see in our world right now, sadly. So we'll get started on our first song and we'll take a music break. This first song that I'm looking at is called Pink and White by Frank Ocean. We hope you enjoy. And that was Pink and White
by Frank Ocean. Check it out on his most recent release, Blonde.
Yeah, so we'll be playing some more songs from that playlist throughout the show. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ike. Blessings from above. So we're gonna jump right in. So we have a great topic today. As I mentioned before the show started, we're going to be talking about just the differences in experiences with the law enforcement, and then more so specifically how that relates to bias and generalizations and the difference between the two. And if you don't know the difference between the two, you picked a good day to tune in because we're going to go through those and we're going to talk about our experiences with that, me and Josiah. And keep in mind, like pre-warning, I always say this in every show, my experience is going to be mild compared to anyone who's full POC, just because I'm a mixed race student, so I have the privilege of complexion.
I am not a mixed race student, so I do not have that.
So before we define those things, though, I just want to share a story with you guys. So this happened over the break, and yeah, it's kind of spanning through my experience with a cop, and then how I brought that up to my parents and the difference in how they talked about it too. So mom and dad, if you're listening, I hope I am portraying your words accurately. And I just want to jump right in. So I was borrowing a friend's car from school, and this was during the break. So this was just recently. I was driving a car it was my friend's car from Whitworth, and I was in Portland, and I got pulled over, and it was the first time I've ever gotten pulled over. Honestly, I have never interacted with a cop in a way where I was doing something wrong or had no idea what I was doing, and got pulled over, and I basically I had no idea what to do. I panicked. Honestly, my first instinct, which is terrible, was to open the door and undo my seatbelt, to get out to go talk to him, to be like, what's wrong? And I just don't do that. Don't do that if you're a person of color. Don't do that especially if you're a person of color. Don't do that. Don't do that if you're a white person. Don't do that. That's just not a smart idea. And I didn't realize that until after I thought, maybe this isn't a good idea. He might shoot me. I could probably die. And I actually told my dad about that, and he was like, just what the heck were you thinking? Because he was like, don't do that. Anyway, so I get pulled over. This cop, turns on his lights. I get freaked out. I'm just sitting in the car panicking. Comes up to my window, bangs his flashlight against my window, and he goes, I need your license and I need your registration right now. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be honest. This is not my car. And I just need to tell you that out of the get-go. I'm borrowing this friend's car. I'm going to school up at Whitworth. Explain the whole thing to him. He goes, I asked the questions around here. And I was like, okay, I didn't ask any questions. I was just telling you that's just who I am, And the cop proceeded to get, even more flustered and ask me more questions. Why I had the car, what I was doing, what my intent with the car was. And I was just, to keep in mind, I am just a student who is just in Portland visiting my family, so I didn't really have a major story to give him. But it was a weird experience, and he had another cop come, and he didn't tell me why he was pulling me over, which was the weirdest part about all of it. I was getting pulled over and had no idea why. And usually they tell you, when they pull you over, the first thing they say,
do you know how fast you were going?
Yes, exactly. And I was like, I wasn't driving fast. I'm pretty sure everything seemed fine. And then at the end of he calls, the person who owns the car. He called them. They confirmed that I was able to use the car. And then at the very end of the conversation, he goes, make sure your tags get checked. They're expired. And I was like, what? I'm getting pulled over. All this stuff's happening for just this. And so I walked away without a ticket, which is great. So I honestly have, that story is really good. It ends really well. But the reason I share that story is because not every person has the same experience. And I realize that I have the privilege of complexion to go into that experience and walk out completely unharmed and fine. So I brought that story to my parents. And my dad, who's Mexican, fully Mexican, told me all these stories. He's like, that's, typical for cops. They pulled me over for random things and didn't give me a reason why. And, had just very horrible experiences with cops. Some good ones, but mainly horrible. And my stepmom, who was white, she was telling me that she trusts cops more. They're more trustable. Why? We don't have any reason to be afraid of them, And I just want to say that as it is and just let you come to the conclusion of what I'm trying to say. Every person has their own experience with law enforcement. And a lot of it has to do with who they are, their cultural identity, what they look like, their complexion. Sadly, everyone has a different and it depends on the cop. But what I've experienced from my friends and my POCs that I know who've shared stories with me, that mainly it's one way. Mainly there seems to be generalizations made over them, comments that are claimed over them, that evaluate them statically, and then they literally just have to sit there and hope to God that they don't get shot, don't get pulled over, don't get arrested, and it's just a very different experience, and so I wanted to share that story just to kind of kick off the show, to think about more about the idea of generalizations and biases, and like what that means and how to define that, because I think we all have different definitions, but let's try to come to a conclusion on what a definition for those two words could be.
And I guess we're using law enforcement as an example to demonstrate kind of what kind of generalization society has about people of color, people of mixed race, people who look different, people who are non-white, people who are not the dominant demographic or dominant race in today's society. And so law enforcement is just one example. And I just want to say that we do appreciate everything and all that law enforcement does to keep our country safe. We are just saying that there are examples out there of police and law enforcement doing acting in a certain way towards a group of people or group of a certain race, and that's all we're trying to say. We're not trying to badmouth or diss law enforcement in any way.
Totally.
We are just saying that there's a lot of generalizations or bias that goes on even in interactions between people of color and law enforcement. Yeah. And like the thing is, it's so funny because like I have family on my mom's side who are in law enforcement, and a couple of relatives who are in the Navy, and so it's hard for me to like have an experience like that and immediately like associate like evil or like badness with these people, but it does make me question like the perfection of the system. It does make me question how good every person is in these, or how not good, I'm using very big words, how, I guess, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like it just made me question how reliable the system can be, especially that's set up to protect you and serve you, is then treating you like a criminal, and so it really threw me through a loop. And then I realized, I take this really mildly, but I know that there's experiences of people who have been through much worse. Just turn on the news and look at anything happening in Detroit, anything happening in Columbus. There's race riots happening all the time, and it's scary, I guess. And I think, and we can even look in past examples like Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown, like those instances, those shootings, those instances sparked riots between different races, and we're just gonna kind of be looking at that today, kind of that hidden bias, or not really hidden, but not really spoken about bias, the kind of bias we let slide in a way as a society.
Yeah. We also have some incredible definitions. So I'm just going to run through this. This is taken from Stereotypes versus Generalizations, a website based on sharing the definitions of important terms related to race, ethnicity. It talks about what are the difference. Okay, so before we jump in, I want to give you two examples, and I want you to think about what this means to you and in your life. When I give these statements, I want you to try to see a difference between them, okay?
And in fact, we encourage you to call in.
Yes, please call in. Call in. Tell us what you're thinking. If these if you're like, I disagree with everything you're saying, and here's why, we are welcome to, like, we welcome that. So please call in. We'd love to hear you guys and hear you guys' thoughts. But here are these two statements. Statement number 1: Latinos are close to outsiders. They only do business among themselves. So let me repeat that. Latinos are closed to outsiders. They only do business among themselves. That's statement 1. Statement 2: trust is important in the Latino community. To do business, you first need to build relationships. So, in intercultural conversations, we need to just separate in our minds for a second what these two words, stereotypes and generalizations, mean. So, here's the gist. Generalizations can be helpful sometimes, but stereotypes are hurtful, right? So if I say to you, so the first statement would technically be considered a stereotype. Latinos are close to outsiders. They only do business among themselves. That's a stereotype. But a generalization is like, I don't know. And I don't even know if it's necessarily good all the time, but it's not as bad as a stereotype.
I would, if I may,
yeah.
I would describe a stereotype as something kind of an overarching broad statement that has a negative tone, like the first one, which was Latinos only do business among themselves. Kind of that negative almost makes you feel dirty in a way. Whereas a generalization is more ignorant based on lack of experience. Mm-hmm. Like, could you read the second statement again?
Yeah. So the second statement says, trust is important in the Latino community. To do business, you first need to build relationships.
Okay, first of all, why wouldn't that be true for every demographic and every business dealing? So that's sort of what I'm talking about, though, when I say that.
Yeah.
But a generalization doesn't necessarily have a negative tone. It's just ignorant based on a lack of experience in that situation. If that makes no sense, call in and tell me. Or if that makes perfect sense, call in and tell me.
Yeah. Yes, please call in. Honestly, there are... here's another way to look at it. And in my mind, generalizations are over an entire group, whereas stereotyping can happen so subtly and distinctly among individuals. But the stereotype statement can reflect a generalization, right? So if I say, this is an example. I shared this on the show a couple episodes back, but I'm going to reiterate it because it's important. When somebody signs my yearbook in high school and says, mow my lawn, and says a statement like that, which is a stereotype, that comes from a generalization that in that person's mind probably thought, oh, most Hispanics do lawn care, And so you can see how the jump is so quick from a generalization to a stereotype. That it happens almost instinctively. Like we just think about it, say it sometimes, and then just, So that's kind of where it gets a little messy.
Yeah, and I also say it's messy because it's not only really quick, but it can become something that is ignorant to something that is hurtful real quick. So be careful with generalizations, y'all.
And also keep in mind that it's, we talked about this too on the show, that these things happen very subtly, and that's the point of us talking about it and bringing it to the surface, is that this stuff does happen and may often happen more than you realize, not just with racial groups. So that's just one small piece of the pie. There are people, so I'm just gonna like list through in my mind what I know is like, you could be stereotyping based on religion, you can be stereotyping based on ethnicity, race, and those are different, by the way, and then also economic ability, mental health, there are a wide range of groups of people that your words could have a special effect on if you understood, but also could just be really harmful. And actually, I'm taking this class right now. It's intercultural communications, and
with Joe
with
Vigil.
Joe Vigil. Shout out Vigil. Hey.
Take it.
Hey.
I would recommend it. Seriously.
Hey.
We need to become a culturally competent society that is able to communicate across cultures and in between cultures. I'll say that again. We need to become...
Why are you laughing,
no,
Josiah?
but seriously. Let me pull it together. We do need to become a society that focuses more on cultural competency and communicating across and in between cultures.
Because, yeah, the truth is, based on the U.S. Census Bureau data, predictions state that people who come from minority backgrounds or minoritized ethnic groups and parents are going to surpass the white population by 2044. So that's surpassed. And the thing is, that's surpassing it. That doesn't mean that we're going to creep up slowly, And if we just look at the future of our country, mixed race is where it's at. So shout out to mixed race people if you're listening. Please call in.
Oh, shout out to a mixed race person right here, right next to me, Dylan freaking Cade Reyes. He's amazing. Dylan Cade Reyes is amazing. He's mixed race. He's one of the best people I know.
Oh, Josiah.
Don't cry, we're on air.
We're live right now. I gotta be professional. Beck is listening.
Pull yours up together. Oh,
just
Beck,
kidding.
if you are listening, you should be the one listening to our show right now.
Really? Actually, Beck, if you're listening, which I hope to God you are, take this stuff seriously, man. This is important. This is the future of the school. This is the future of our country. And so just know it's going to be creeping up. It's going to be creeping up.
Oh, and we don't say creep in a negative way or negative connotation.
Not at all.
But it's eventually going to happen, according to this most recent census data. And that's okay. That shouldn't be looked upon in any negative way or any bad way.
Totally.
It's just what's happening right now.
Yeah. And so now...
It's not a disease or not, not anything, really. People are people.
Mm-hmm.
So if in fact, I'm going to pull a page out of David Garcia's book for a minute.
Yes.
If that made you uncomfortable to hear that, you need to ask yourself why. And when you figure out why or want to discuss why that made you feel a certain way, you should call in and talk to us about it. We would love to hear your thoughts, your concerns, your questions about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the reason why intercultural competency and communication is so important is because it's the future. It's where we're headed. And it's not, like Josiah said, not meant to scare anyone. It's just statistically speaking, that's where we're headed. So we need to now more than ever be able to communicate across these cultural lines better. And if you haven't started and you feel intimidated by this, because it's a big task to be able to understand this stuff, but it's not an impossible one, and it's actually a lot easier than you realize.
And let me just say that it shouldn't scare anyone. Not only that it's not supposed to or not meant to scare anyone, but it shouldn't scare anyone that mixed race is going to become the most popular demographic, if you will, in the United States. I think it was the next 10 years or something like that, or next 20 maybe. Yeah,
within the next 20 years, it'll be on the rise.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then for context for outside listeners, Beck Taylor is the university president of Whitworth University.
Yes.
Shout out to Whitworth FM as well for being the radio station that would allow this kind of talk show on air. We simply want to address and simply make society and our listeners aware of some of the sometimes subtle biases or sometimes big noticeable biases that police have, or even assumptions that police have when dealing with somebody who is black or somebody who is Mexican or Hispanic is the correct term.
Mexican.
Mexican?
Yeah, I'm Mexican.
Mexican. Thank you, Dale.
There's a lot of terms, so don't worry. I was just realizing this when I was trying to figure out what I am, because like I can't label myself on government forms. It's like not a thing I'm able to do. So, what?
No, I'm just saying, like, that's a problem.
Yeah, I actually read this article, a scholarly article from the California Law Review. I recommend it. It's called "The Multiracial Option: A Step in the White Direction." That's the title of the thing. I'm not cracking jokes.
Love that.
It's really creative, and it's a good read. But the article essentially argued that multiracial as an option is disruptive and ignorant of a person's identity and a person's ethnic identity, right? Because when we give them the option of multiracial and say that that's an option, we are essentially saying, well, the other parts of your story don't matter enough to be put on this form. So just label yourself multiracial, which then again gives back into this idea of like white superiority, which says like you blend in to this culture. And it was a really interesting article. She said that the two main groups of people who are pushing this like multiracial option are white Caucasian moms of mixed race students, mixed race children, and the Republican Party. But she gives
Shout
actually
out GOP.
Shout out GOP. She gives great arguments for why those two groups are the biggest influencers in pushing this option. She would rather have you say mixed race option and then check all that apply, which if you were around for the 2010 U.S. Census data, report that they send out to every person, the options were check all that apply. And that caused a lot of disruption. Did you know this?
But Dill, what about this? We can't possibly name all the races on a form.
Oh, my Lanta. Yes.
I mean, isn't that impossible?
Well, you know what the funny thing is? That's when we need to be careful about understanding the difference between race and ethnicity, right? Because race is I know, right?
There's a difference?
Yes. Yeah. And okay, think about it this way. If race is the trunk of the tree, ethnicities are the branches, right? Is that fair? And I say that because race could be white, race could be black, race could be brown.
Preach it, my brother. Preach it.
But they're basically just saying these are the bigger groups of people that exist in our world. So white can include German, Polish, Swedish, American, Caucasian, English, Irish, Scottish, So but those are all ethnicities under that race, right? And so the white race, which is the thing, if you're not aware, the white race is the thing. And I feel fully confident saying that because I am half white. And I'm aware of how I benefited from that. And if you're not aware of how you're benefiting from it, just walk outside and apply for a job. Apply for health insurance, apply for, a car.
Wait, are we talking about privilege?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
There's a lot to say on privilege. But so there's a good separation though between race and ethnicity that we need to be aware of. Because if we're not aware of those things, we can misinterpret and misidentify people. So the article argued, you know what? Students should be able to, children and anyone of a mixed race background should be able to identify for themselves who they are, not their Caucasian mom, not the GOP. They need to be identified themselves. We need to give that power to them. We cannot take the power and say you're all multiracial, just choose that option, just get over it. That's not okay. And like the reason that's not okay is because you're not giving the dignity to that person's story as you're doing when someone's able to say, I'm white, or I'm German, and if you're white and you think that there should be options for German, you should be proud of that. And like, that's a part of who you are, don't be ashamed by that. Just know that that's the majority. So it'll be easier for you to do that. Whereas it won't be for someone a person of color.
Exactly. Sorry, I cut you off
yeah.
there. And for me, just a personal example for me, I am Korean, but the umbrella that I get to choose is Asian. But if they gave me a Korean option, I would absolutely check that, because if you don't know or aren't aware, Korean is different than Asian.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Let me tell you. So Asian includes a variety of different cultures. And that's what I'm talking about. Korean is a culture. Korean is a way of life that you won't find in China or won't find in Japan. So for me to be able to check Korean would actually be beneficial and meaningful for me, because it gets down to the heart of what I am on the inside, which is part of my culture, rather than what I look like on the outside, which is of course Asian. But I think that that's what Dill is alluding to, and that's what the article that he read is addressing on a more in-depth level.
Yeah, and like another part of the article too that we need to think about is the idea of assimilation. Fun word of the day: assimilation.
Assimilation. Look it up.
If you don't have a dictionary for you, allow me to enlighten you with 3 definitions that have been used in our country regarding assimilation.
Uh-oh.
Number 1, the melting pot.
Wait, drop in some knowledge, Dill.
Oh, okay. I'm supposed to go. Okay, so the melting pot. That's one. That's one way that just says we're all just a melting pot, just assimilate like everyone else, right? That's one option. Another option is just, they all have specific names, and if I want to give them any justice as to like what those names are, I'm going to pull up the California Law Review article that I read recently. This is a great read, by the way. It's a law review, so don't expect it to be like something that is read like the New York Times.
Shout out New York Times.
Shout out New York Times. You're great. You do great things, but just it's a little hard to read sometimes. Okay. No, that's the Wall Street Journal. Okay, so my three definitions. So I give you the melting pot one, which is basically saying like the melting pot. While the melting pot metaphor provided more room for inclusion, in a new and distinct American identity, it still required shedding ancestral identity. Oh, my Lanta. Let me repeat that. While the melting pot metaphor provided more room for inclusion, in a new and distinct American identity, it still required shedding ancestral identity. We have a word for that. It's called code switching, yo. And it just means like getting rid of a part of you to like fit in. Not okay.
Absolutely not.
And then bouncing off that term, Anglo-conformity. That's another term. It basically just relies on 2 essential elements of assimilation: abandonment and of ancestral ties, and subscription to white supremacy. And then finally, cultural pluralism, which just says, oh, everyone just has if everyone's just here in America, then it's an American dream. It's an American nightmare. But it's basically saying that cultural pluralism is the appreciative view of the immigrant's cultural heritage and of its distinctive usefulness both to himself and his adopted country. This conceptual framework allows for distinct ethnicities within the American identity more so than any other ideology of assimilation. So essentially, cultural pluralism is the closest thing we'll get to a safe and healthy view of what assimilation should be, which assimilation can be good, but most of the time it's destructive.
It is destructive when looked through the lens of the first 2 definitions.
Yes.
For the melting pot and
Anglo-conformity.
Anglo-conformity. That's a good word. But it can be looked at positively when looked at through the lens of cultural pluralism, because that definition, that kind of framework, is not asking for an individual who is maybe of mixed race to forget their identity or forget their ancestors. It's accepting of where they have been and where they've come from.
Yeah. Yes.
In a way that we should all be, or all strive to be, as citizens of the world, not to any particular country, but citizens of the world, because there's 7 billion people on this planet with us right now, and if we all just reached out to somebody who looks different physically than us, or has a culturally different background or socioeconomic background than us, then we'd all and just reach out to them and try to get a snippet and try to understand some of their story. We all be in a better place, and this world would be a better place.
Mm-hmm. And it's not easy work, guys. If you're gonna start now.
Joe V. Hill, take Joe V. Hill's
yes.
cultural competency, intercultural communication. That's what it's called.
Yes, and it's. I mean, you'll be challenged. I know that there's students in my class right now who are challenged, and you know what? I see it and I appreciate it. Like, you don't realize how much this is gonna help you in the world, in the real world. Like, I mean, I don't know if Whitworth, population-wise, is the best representation of the world's population, and specifically America's population. And as it's growing and becoming something much more culturally pluralistic, that it's just going to look different. And so we need to be more competent in this area. So for all my white friends in that class, you guys are doing it. We need to get into specifics more, but you guys are doing it great so far. So, yeah. And
it's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it.
Hey, if you're still listening, please call in. I haven't even said the phone number yet. So you guys are probably like, I don't, or if anyone's listening.
What's the phone number, Dale?
The phone number is 509-777-3278. Give us a call. We want to get one caller by the end of tonight, so please call in. Tell us what you're feeling, what you're thinking. But if you're listening and this is your first time, welcome to InDifference with Dylan,
where we make a difference and not be indifferent.
Mm-hmm. If you look at our title,
that's a great.
It's
great tag, slogan.
Oh yeah,
make
slogan.
A difference. Don't be indifferent.
Make it be in.
Oh,
be in the difference.
I'm taking. I'm.
Don't be indifferent.
I'm taking credit for that. Make a difference.
We might have just hired our PR person.
Okay. All right.
But before we go, I wanted to play.
We have to go.
We have to go. We have to sign off.
The show is almost over. Oh, can I just say thank you so much to Dylan Reyes for having me on the show. And I've had a blast. I used to do radio when I was in school, but it was a music-centered...
Wait, you're not in school?
No. I'm graduating. It was a music-centered show where I played music a lot of the time, didn't really talk. And it's just been... I've had a blast to be on this show, and I'm really honored to be here. And like I said in the beginning, I've always wanted to be on it. I think they really talk about cool topics, and especially from a different perspective. I mean, Dill is mixed race and Ike is black, so they have a different experience than the most Whitworth students here.
Yes, we do.
I meant to say most white Whitworth students here. So I think it's really awesome what they're doing and what they're talking about. So I'm honored to be on the show, filling in for Ike. Ike will be back next show.
Hopefully, if his surgery went well.
If not, I will be on the show again.
I want to give a precursor. I should have given this at the beginning of the show. Ike is not. He's fine. He's living. He just had a wisdom teeth surgery. Everything's fine. The procedure went well. He's a little loopy, but who isn't after those things?
Ike is alive and well, and we love him. And he'll be back next show.
Yes, and I'm gonna play one more song, and then we'll give a quick couple comments after the song. This is fitting because it's my hometown, but this song's called "Portland" by Drake, Quavo, and Travis Scott. Enjoy.
Thank you for listening to the Indifference podcast, where we encourage people, listeners all over the world, all over the country, to make a difference and not be indifferent. What did you say? Be in the difference, not indifferent. Ooh, that's good. I've had a blast filling in for Ike, who will be back next time this show airs. Thanks.
Thank you so much for coming, Josiah. Yeah, it's been great having you. Like old times. Okay, well, yeah, we're gonna end with a Star Wars song, so we hope you enjoy.
You're not supposed to ruin it.
Oh,
You're not
shoot.
supposed to ruin it. He ruined it. Michael Phelps with the swim moves. Hey,
Michael
hey.
Phelps
Oh,
with the
listen,
swim
hold up. I have a question. So, I just want to say, like, Quavo is on the song Portland, but Quavo is the least talented member of Migos. You heard it here
I
first
agree.
through Josiah Van Wingerden on the Indifference podcast. Offset and Takeoff are both better than Quavo, and yet Quavo gets all the features. So, if that's not injustice, I don't know what is.
Congrats to Offset and Cardi B. Hope you guys have a great marriage.
Oh, are they engaged?
They're engaged.
Oh man,
If you haven't seen The Ring, it's
pretty big.
it's pretty big. Cardi B's like,
It's huge.
I don't want to impersonate Cardi B. I don't want to offend anyone. But all I know is that The Ring wasn't big enough. Thanks for listening
Anyway,
in.
we're gonna sign off now.
Tune in next week, same time, same place.
We love
Let us disturb your hour.
We love you.